bunch of teenagers, and he's never done the NBA dunk contest because he's a guy that, I don't want to get hurt and I don't want to go out there and here he is jumping in a layup line and doing that. Was he back there stretching it out and doing all this stuff? I mean, just think about worst case scenario, Eric. He lands like Klay Thompson, blows his ACL out in a stupid situation where he's just trying to get attention because he knows there's 500 iPhone cameras on him and all this stuff's going to go viral. But think about worst case scenario of a guy that's in his mid 30s now that probably isn't as warmed up nearly as he is when he plays, jumping in a layup line and like just going ham on these dunks.
I agree.
So I think there's that part that's stupid. The other part is you're there for your son. Just be his dad. You can be excited. You can clap. You can do those things. You don't have to run out on the floor to be part of the story. You lost your shoe. What if another kid whose parents are in the stand that's supporting their kid and they don't have the money or the clout that you do, and that kid comes down and steps on your shoe and he gets hurt? What if when you go back out in the court and you lean down, you fall into a kid's knee and you hurt him? What's that going to look like to that other kid and that other family that's there and supporting their kid? That's what pisses me off the most is the people that are defending this as, LeBron's a great dad because he's supporting his kid. Nobody's saying he's not a great father and he's not there supporting his kid. Stay off the damn floor. You're still a dad. You're not a referee and you're not a coach. Even if you were, you don't get to run out on the court in the middle of play and celebrate. So that's my problem with it is, yes, LeBron is always a guy that wants attention. This whole Taco Tuesday, I don't even want to eat a damn taco anymore because I'm so sick of LeBron. He does one thing and people like it. And now every single Tuesday, it's got to be him screaming about tacos. Oh, for God's sake. I mean, he's become the person on Facebook that posts things that, they post the selfie because they want people to be like, oh, you're so wonderful. You're so beautiful. Oh, like, comment. And they're like, that's what LeBron likes. Like, I feel like he sits on Instagram like, I wonder how many people saw my story. Ooh, look at all my clicks today. Look at all the celebrities that like my story. They all like my Taco Tuesday. I'm thinking like, what's he going to come up with next? Like French Fry Friday? Like, where are we going to get to next with LeBron? It's like attention is never enough. You're there to be a dad. Stop being selfish about it. Be there, support your son. If you want to clap, you want to jump up and down, you want to cheer for him, great. You don't need to be in the layup line because you don't need to show your son up and you don't need to get hurt in front of your son. And you don't need to be on the middle of the court. That's my things with it. Nobody said he was a bad father, but this whole notion, Eric, if that was any other parent, look, we just saw the worst case of this a couple weeks ago in Colorado at that baseball game where a parent came onto the field, ended up picking up a bat, and a whole Donnybrook broke out between all these parents and a bunch of like scared 7 and 8 year olds running around trying to get off the field. And these people are going nuts. That's the worst case when you see a parent get onto the playing field because other parents don't know what is going on. That was any other parent, they probably would have been ejected from the game in that situation. And people just, it's LeBron. That doesn't mean that you get to break the rules. Yeah. LeBron knows about basketball. He knows about basketball etiquette. If someone else's dad ran onto the floor of an NBA game, he would have a fit. He would be everybody would go nuts.
I think you're making a lot of fair points. There's some of those points that I really couldn't even argue and actually wouldn't argue because I agree with you.
It's just back off.
The shoe on the floor thing,
then becomes
not a good
like everybody,
idea.
like they have to take a side.
But the thing is, I think some of it is cultural. And, I don't want to get into this a whole lot because I don't want to make it about that. But I think there's different ways of being expressive, different animations, different emotions in sporting events and concerts and things where I have African-American friends who they're just more emotive than I am. And I think that's great. I think that's just you look at, for example, when someone does a nasty posterizing dunk in the NBA, when they're all like almost getting on the court and holding each other back and making stank faces and everything else like that. That's just a part of their culture, a part of how they like to express their emotions and their feelings. And that's fine to me. I don't have any problem with that. But I think that breaking the rules or going over and above and things like that, I totally agree with. Now, as far as being in the layup line and things like that, I mean, if he were to, yes, have a Klay Thompson moment, would that be a bad thing? Sure, it would be terrible. And the optics of it would be horrendous. But I also don't think that athletes should not be allowed to live their lives. This is probably under the microscope more because it's LeBron James. But there's probably a lot of NBA fathers who attend or go to practices or are involved in some way in their son's basketball programs. And we just never hear about it. And it's not on the news and it's not all over social media, whether that's LeBron doing that or whether that's other people holding up their cell phones and recording that is not really the point. But I wouldn't want to be wrapped in bubble wrap if I was LeBron. I mean, I work hard. I play the game and then I want to live my life. I want to enjoy my life. And so if you were LeBron's son, how do you feel about it if you're LeBron's son and your dad is just out there having a good time with you? Does that bother you or is that okay?
Well, I'm sure with Bronny Jr., I mean, he's probably grown up around just his dad being the main guy and being the guy that's always in the spotlight. So he's probably much more equipped to this than us as fathers would be, where you just don't want to overstep at that point. I look at a guy like Kobe Bryant, one of the best players in the game. You brought it up about LeBron being a top 3 guy. Kobe's in that conversation, at least in the top 5 with his 5 titles. He coaches his teenage daughter. I have never seen a video of Kobe Bryant in the layup line. I've never seen a video of him running out on the court and going nuts and celebrating. He's a guy that's talked about it openly, about how much he enjoys the coaching and some of the challenges that he's had in kind of being that coach from a player. He's one of the greatest, and he could get away with it, and he doesn't do it. The point is, he is
also
in
different
his child's
people.
life.
They're also different people, you know, different personalities, different maturity levels. I think LeBron, I think a lot of times he just is immature. He's just, almost living vicariously through his kids. And it comes across very, very immature to me. Whereas Kobe Bryant and, you know, Mamba, the Black Mamba, and he's just a much more stately, a much more mature individual. And I think that's just their differences in personality, really, right? Even when Kobe was playing, he didn't have the same personality in the locker room that LeBron does.
Well, Kobe was like the assassin. So you would think Kobe would be out there just like, you know, all right, let's go girls, 1-on-1 line here and just like murdering the whole team. Like that's what Kobe feels like.
Right. Yeah.
But I think though, Eric, that whole thing of like living vicariously, LeBron, if he's a top 3 guy, why does he even need to do that with his son? He's been there. He is there at that point. My point is, I just think in the middle of a game to run out on the floor as a guy who has been in those arenas, he would have a fit if somebody else did that to him in an arena. He'd have a fit if he was running back on defense and stepped on a fan's shoe that had run out in the court, and it ends up being like, oh yeah, it's Klay Thompson's dad. He just decided to go out and chest bump Klay in the middle of the game, and his loafer fell off, and LeBron fell over it. LeBron
I agree.
would go nuts about that. It's just be there for your kid. You can be happy. You can celebrate if it's a timeout and you want to run out there. I know he's got something where he runs the team, but he's not the coach. Do that kind of stuff.
I don't like Pludge.
But Christ, Eric, it was a couple weeks ago. He was shooting threes against a 14-year-old and like, well, I had to teach this youngster a lesson. Well, great, LeBron. I'm glad you could beat a little white 14-year-old in a 3-point shooting contest. That's wonderful. I'm glad that's where your career is now to develop yourself. I mean,
I think you're looking too much into it, though. I mean, I get what you're saying. I really do. I think you're just putting too much stock into that. Need
for LeBron's attention, I think that drives me crazy as a father.
Absolutely.
Because like my daughter is young, but she's doing stuff in sports, and I don't feel that, she's in golf lessons, and I don't feel the need to be like, hey, let me pull out my TaylorMade here and whack one so I can show all these little kids how far I can hit the ball. I don't do that because I'd probably duck hook and hurt one of them. But I don't feel the need as a parent to do that. I don't understand why LeBron does, why he's not just watching his son being like, damn, this kid's really good. There's a chance he could be in the league with me. Not like, hey, it's a chance for me to get on Instagram and show my dunks off that I really won't do in competition in the dunk contest and have always been against, but I'm going to do it in a layup line in front of a gym of 1,000 people.
Yeah.
It just drives me crazy to see it. And then you add in the fact that just a chance for an injury on something stupid like that. Look, I'm not saying LeBron should never practice. I'm just saying, like, if you haven't done anything and you just walk out and swing a driver as hard as you can, there's a better chance that you're going to pull something versus if you go out and practice for 20 minutes warming up. Same thing with LeBron. This is the guy that is meticulous with his body, spends millions of dollars a year and does all this stuff before games to get himself ready. Unless he's doing that in the back of an AAU gym, I just think that there's a risk there that maybe doesn't need to be there.
Sure. I think, like I said, I think you have a lot of fair points there. When I just to clarify, when I said living vicariously, I probably didn't use the right word there, but what I mean is he's enjoying his son's childhood, living vicariously. I mean, LeBron had a childhood where maybe it wasn't quite the same as his son's childhood. Obviously it wasn't, because he grew up in a much harder situation, but he's almost treating his son as a friend and enjoying the moment with him. And I think you're right. It's because there's so many cameras, including some of his own, where it goes up on his own social media, that, could really rub people the wrong way, because it's like the story is still about him. And I totally get that. I think that's a fair point, but I'm definitely not going to be mad at him for enjoying, those times with his son, because his son will soon be 18 years old and living his own life in the NBA. And, these times will be gone. I totally get it. I really do. I think there's a lot of fair points there. And again, some of them, just like with the clutch thing, even though I'm a LeBron fanboy, there's some of them I don't agree with. And like you said, for him to run out on the court and overextend really the things he should be allowed to do, I'm against that, because that's not appropriate. It shouldn't happen. It shouldn't be allowed. The referees should put a stop to that. But some of these other things where he's just having a good time, I think I think sometimes we have the tendency to read too much into these types of things, just because of the amount of exposure that these athletes have, where they're in front of our faces all the time. Whereas if they were doing all of those things and no one knew about it, it wouldn't, sway your bias, because you wouldn't know about it. So yeah. I think that's part of it for me, and why I don't get as upset about it. I mean, again, I think it's goofy. I think some of it is not necessary. And I agree. If he gets injured, it's a terrible optic and a really bad way to lose a season. But if he's having a good time with his son, when all of us would do that, I understand.
All right, Nick. Well, that went better than I expected. We didn't get too mad at each other. So let's finish it out with Major League Baseball, a topic we don't always talk about a lot, but we're starting to get business is picking up a little bit here. We've had the Major League Baseball trade deadline. It's come and gone. So it kind of slow. Not a lot of big names. You had the Trevor Bauer deal getting moved, Yasiel Puig moving around. And then today the news broke Zach Greinke is headed to the Astros. So is that just far and away the biggest deal of the trade deadline and the most impactful deal?
Yeah, for sure, because it moves the needle for me as someone who doesn't follow baseball, day in and day out. I certainly know who the Astros are in terms of them being a recent World Series champion. I know that move is big to them. I also know that they're still in first place in the West. So even just being an outsider who looks at the standings, once every 2 weeks, just to kind of keep an eye on it, I know who Greinke is again. So I know that move is big for the Astros, but you look at other things that didn't happen. You look at the fact that there really wasn't a lot of player movement. There really wasn't a lot of things about Major League Baseball in the trade deadline. We just got out of NBA free agency, which was phenomenal, but we look forward to, the NBA trade deadline again, because it's the same type of movement and excitement. Major League Baseball just does not have that kind of name recognition. I mean, we'll get to the NFL here in a couple months with trade deadlines and things like that, and it will just be unbelievable, because we might see these guys like AJ Green have an opportunity to get moved around if teams have a chance to do that. In Major League Baseball, the names just aren't household names, except for these guys that are making huge, huge contracts. And that's the only reason we know about them. Other than that, there's just not a whole lot going on in Major League Baseball that moves the needle for me.
It really is amazing, because years and years ago, I can remember the Major League trade deadline is coming up. And it was like, here, Peter Gammons was on ESPN. It felt like 24/7, and there would be 15 to 20 impactful trades. It would feel like,
yeah.
I mean, it was just name after name after name for like a 24 to 36 hour period of just names you knew of guys getting moved around. And
remember when guys like Randy Johnson, get moved from the Mariners, things like that. Those are like wow moments, guy like Bobby Bonilla moves from the Pirates to the Mets. Things like this, when we were kids, we were growing up, it's like we heard about it. Carl Ravitch and Baseball Tonight. And now it's like, oh, well, Greinke got over to the Astros and now they're a favorite to win the World Series. Oh, great. That's about all I know.
Yeah, it really is amazing just how Major League Baseball, the contracts, how different they are, the number of guys you actually recognize their name, that they're not up there to get those huge money deals, and the teams just bypass them to get cheaper guys. Just kind of the way of baseball. It's become such a numbers game, the sabermetrics, the analytics. It's really driven a lot of fans away because you don't really know the players. The game itself has seemed to change a lot on the field, where it's a lot of strikeouts and teams are either going for home runs or bust. It's not a lot of small ball or moving runners, anything like that. And it's just a long season. And in the world today, it's just like, I don't really have 162 nights to invest in my team anymore. And the Orioles are horrible anyways. And that's not really driving things for me to want to stay engaged. And even a team like the Phillies,